Yeah.
That little counter is people when they log in.
I've never been on the guest side of this app, so I'm not sure. But most of the views come next week.
Oh, yeah, with the
Oh, really?
recorded version.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
replays.
I think we might have some whalers in here today. Some people said they wanted to join.
Good.
I hope
We'll
so.
have to see.
Y'all can use some softball questions.
Is there a way for the audience to ask questions?
For sure. Yeah. Anywhere they are, the questions or comments come through on a little feed I've got, and then I can flash them up on the screen, and y'all can
Sweet.
address them or laugh at them or sneer at them or flick them off, whatever you feel like doing. We like in all the years of doing this, we've had one complete douchebag come up and leave some really jerk comments. There's some guy in Australia too.
I was going to say, when was that? But I think
It's
I
just-
recall now.
It's
He's
like
having
2 or
a bad
3.
day.
It was prior to the pandemic, I think. But he was all mad that we wouldn't. He was in the car business in Australia, and I can't remember exactly what show it was, but he was super mad that we wouldn't address something going on in Australia.
Yeah.
Started cussing at us. It's like, well, we ain't got no laws going on here.
Is that saved forever? So as people rewatch, they see all that, or what?
Well, I have the ability to say no. Your comment will not show in the feed.
Yeah.
Many of his did not.
Probably. Yeah, probably a good idea.
Is dealer refresh mostly or entirely U.S.?
No, we're international.
Yeah.
Yeah. We block a lot of countries, because we get so much spam. But, it's what, North America, South America. I think we've got Europe,
Most
parts
of
of Europe open. Yeah.
India to some regard. They're all on
Yeah.
VPNs in India anyway, so we wouldn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, here we go. All right.
Yeah, policing the spam and spam users, registered users, can be a nuisance at times.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is a lot of the people in the community catch up on it real quick, and they'll report it, and then it goes into a holding tank where we can go through and approve or resolve, reject.
It's great to be back, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us again.
Always.
Yeah.
I'm always excited to know what's going on over at WideWail.
That's what I'm talking about, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it's about
We
you,
were-
Jeff.
We were here like 60 days ago, right?
Was it? Yeah,
January.
maybe last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you threw down a little bit of a gauntlet, Jeff. Like, hey, show me how my store's doing.
I did, didn't I?
I think you did it with confidence. I've been through your store front and back now, and it appears that customers at your store have an exceptional experience, and we'll talk about that. But hats off to you and the team.
Good. It's been a little bit more of a challenge the past couple of years for whatever reason. I used to beg for a bad review. Please, someone just give us a bad review so it doesn't look so fake.
Yeah.
It's just, some type of trade and value review, or maybe something silly in service, which most of the negative reviews, if we do get one, that's usually what happens. But we started down a conversation last time, and we won't get into that too deep, but just seems like society has sort of shifted a little bit the past couple of years. And all of a sudden everyone loves to, the moment something doesn't go their way, they're throwing out the phobic terms on us. So that's been fun.
Yeah, well, part of what, frankly, part of what WideWail does, people who are upset always have the motivation, right, to complain and complain publicly. And outside of our industry, as we speak to folks in other verticals, I love asking the question, what do you think a car dealership's Google star rating is? And they're
Good
always
question.
like 2 to 3. They assume is the average for a car dealership. And that's just this halo. There's just this halo of negativity that comes with auto, because these are large purchases and upset people are pretty loud about it. But as we've proven a bunch of times, think of our voice of customer report or our brand scorecard, the average consumer is having a really great experience with a car dealership. You know, like dealers on our platform are a 4.7. That's just
I believe that.
the reality of
Fun
day
to
to
buy a
day.
car.
It's fun to buy a
Well,
car,
and-
and frankly, 90% of service transactions go swimmingly. Just those people don't think to advocate for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
Or you don't
if
ask.
if a dealer truly has and offers bad customer service, we know that's quickly going to reflect on the review sites. I mean, I'm sure you guys maybe have some stats around that. It'd always be interesting to see what's the true impact of having a 2-star review or a 3-star review. But my point being is, a dealership, pretty damn difficult to get away with giving shitty service now. I mean, they're going to blast you across social media. I remember back in the day before there were really a lot of review sites out there like now. Hell, some people would register a URL and freaking put up a freaking dedicated website, why this dealership sucks.com. I mean, we ran into that many times 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. So if there's one good thing about the review sites, that's it's sort of diminished. I haven't seen someone go out of their way to build a complete website for a long time.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot. Jake and I actually talk about this a lot. There's a review is a depreciating asset, right? So whether positive or negative, the impact of that review has a pretty short lifespan. In most cases, reviews start losing their validity or their weight in the next person's journey after about 2 weeks. Once you get past a month or 3 months old, those reviews aren't all that helpful anymore. Sure, they play into the star rating average. But
is it because of the age of the review or where it's showing up in the order of the reviews?
Age. So the average dealer in the US gets 10 reviews on Google per month, which sounds really low, but that's the US average. So if you think over the case of 90 days, we've got 30 fresh reviews. Those reviews that are older than 90 days just don't feel as relevant, right? So that's why we talk so much about the importance of review frequency. There's stores out there. There's entire networks in automotive that average 1 review per store per month.
To this day, really?
Yeah, right now.
I find that hard to believe, but I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah. So Jake got together a pretty cool presentation, basically, to show you what we're doing with reviews today, kind of what's possible with reviews in a single use case. And we wanted to share that with you all to kind of guide some conversation, to hear what questions you might have, what questions folks might have for us as they're watching the session. But we have a belief, and here's the philosophical statement. Every store has a brand mosaic around it. Those comments that are coming in every day, week, month, right? So you have a bad experience in the service bays, and let's say one customer goes and leaves a 1-star review, and they get friends to support them, right? Which are, by the way, that's a violation of Google's policies. But you can have these review attacks that don't get resolved for 48 to 96 hours. And when I say resolved, Google will remove those reviews that don't fit their policy, but it takes a little bit. For that 3-day, 4-day window, let's say, you've got a pretty depressed brand mosaic. In other words, a large percentage of comments about the store are very negative. So that brand mosaic around the store, Facebook comments, Instagram comments, GBP Q&A, reviews, in concert, we measure that and try to influence it to be more positive by pulling out the voice of happy customers, of course, properly managing those upset customers. But we can take that brand mosaic up to, let's say, the manufacturer level. So what do customers think broadly of the customer experience across all stores at this one OEM? And then how does that customer experience for that one OEM network-wide compare to the customer experience that folks are having at a competitive manufacturer, right? Again, brand level. So aggregate all of what people are saying and point out where there are discrepancies in customer experience across the two brands. That makes sense?
Total sense. Yes. I'm sure going
Awesome.
through all this data has been fun and enlightening.
It's been awesome. So I tell this, I've probably told this story, 15 times. We released the brand scorecard at February 2nd. It was like the first day of NADA. And we've engaged in so many conversations around this data since then. But the genesis of it really, when Jake started at WideWail in 2019, is that right, Jake?
Yeah, fall of 2019.
Nailed it.
Yep.
We shipped 10,000 reviews at the time. We were so excited about this. We took 10,000 automotive reviews and we thought, wow, this is a lot of reviews. And we sent it to a PhD candidate at Princeton who needed to, do a capstone project, and through a friend had found that we have a bunch of unstructured data that she could apply technologies to measure. Right. And so we sent this file to her and had a couple of introductory calls as she started to play with the data. But we just said, tell us why people leave negative reviews. I want to tell our dealer customers in the industry why people leave negative reviews for car dealers. And it was a pretty small sample size, but we reflected on what she gleaned from that data 4 years ago, 5 years ago, compared to what we've got now, which is the result of an analysis of 4 million reviews. She was pretty close. They were
really?
It was statistically significant, right? So, now today, of course, we've matured that process, brought on data science and some improved capabilities to collect these reviews, and we're telling the industry about itself.
Awesome.
Well, before Jake shows these things, I just want to admire Jake's setup here. Like, your chair looks like super comfortable. You got the killer microphone.
Trying to sit back a little bit and be comfortable.
Got the pull out couch behind you. Is this where you stay most of your time?
This week for sure. Yeah, this is where all the guests stay. Right there.
Sounds like a long story.
I know. I like that chair, by the way. Super comfy.
Alex is going to have one next week.
Yeah. All right. Ready, Jake?
Should we get into it?
Sure.
Let's get into it.
Okay. So we launched the brand scorecard last month, which was when we initially were with you guys. We were talking about the Voice of Customer report, which is looking at reviews for the whole industry and trends that pull out of at the topic level in a lot of cases. Amongst those reviews for the brand scorecard, we looked specifically at 32 OEMs and aggregated all the dealership review data for each of those brands into one report. And I think historically, reviews have been primarily focused on and talked about in the industry as a marketing tactic, a marketing tool to build your reputation, gain visibility, bring in more customers through that means. And it still is that way. But with the research we've been doing and the technology that we've developed that we'll get into a little bit later, we're starting to find the ability to pull really interesting insights out of reviews. And it is, after all, what your customers are talking about. And kind of distilling that down through technology into usable insights is really helpful. So this deck today is about showing what's possible. And I'm focused on Cadillac just as a particular use case. And I'll get into why I chose Cadillac in a little bit. Okay, so little context setting before we dive deep in. Cadillac came in 29. 29 out of 32 brands with a reputation health score of 58. And why Cadillac performed there is primarily on its low review volume numbers. The monthly average industry benchmark last year was 10.4, and Cadillac is at a little over 4 reviews a month. But when you look at that in context of the whole report, if this is, it's probably a little bit small, but at the top of the list, we have Lexus doing 21 reviews a month, heading in the list, and Cadillac all the way down there towards the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, not the best look for Cadillac, but they do have solid rating metrics at 4.5 and 94% response rate. So an obvious issue in review volume, good other metrics. But while these 4 core metrics, the big 4 as I like to call them, really are the driving indicators of a productive reputation strategy, it's sort of just the tip of the iceberg. We can learn a lot more from the topic information that goes into these reviews. And when we did the Voice of the Customer report, we studied 27 specific topics, ended up being about 1.1 million reviews. And when we looked at those 27 topics, just to give a little background here, we found 10 to be the most influential topics. So the band on the top, these are the 5 topics that are most likely to come up in a positive review. If you do these 5 things really well, you have the highest probability of a positive outcome for your reputation generally. Conversely, on the bottom, these 5 topics, communication on down, are the topics that are most often mentioned in negative reviews. So less negative mentions of communication is likely to have the most positive impact on your reputation. So while
nothing here surprises me.
Right. I think it's things that are talked about a lot. We've talked about quite a bit before. Staff is by far the most serious driver, and positive mentions tend to skew slightly more sales, but it's not far from 50-50. And issues related to communication, related to repair quality, wait time, price are all intermingled, usually on the service side.
All right.
So before I settled on Cadillac, when I was poking around in our topic research, I started with communication just because it was the most obvious topic to look at, because it's the most commonly mentioned topic in negative reviews. So what I did is I took, for each OEM, the percentage of negative mentions of communication in their reviews and mapped it against the benchmark for the industry. So you can see it mimics the overall rankings pretty similarly. Lexus has 14% fewer negative mentions compared to the industry benchmark, and has the least amount of negativity related to communication, which contributes to its great reputation. And then we see Genesis down here at the bottom is doing worse than the industry with negative mentions of communication.
That's interesting.
I just keep noticing Jaguar at the bottom. The question of whether they're going to longer in the air.
Some news, a lot of news around Jaguar right now, right?
Yeah, I've been keeping abreast of that as well, and they are towards the bottom of the list in a bunch of different categories for us.
Now, is this? Do you think that these are brands that are paying less attention to it, or like Toyota and Lexus have always been very big on customer satisfaction. I mean, Lexus helped create CSI with JD Power in 1991. So
Mhm.
I'm not surprised they're at the top.
Yeah, but Mercedes is pretty anal about it as well. Look where they're sitting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always think of something that Jake said. Staff is staff has the largest opportunity to change a customer experience. Period. Doesn't matter what technology you use. Like your people are most important in every scenario. And I tend to look at this and say, there's a culture in a brand that drives customer experience. You mentioned Lexus and Toyota. And if you've ever had a chance to interact with those brands outside of technology and strategies and all the things, like what programs are we going to run? Like, oh, that's all really important, but their focus on ensuring that the customer is cared for, period, it's legendary. And that flows right to communication. And it's little things, guys. It's like customer drops off their car for the day. Why is it that they haven't heard anything at 4 o'clock? Right? The car, maybe it came down off the lift at 11 and it's ready to be picked up. Just nobody took the moment to finish that process, and
Well,
just
there's really no
call or text
excuse.
the customer.
There, I mean, you touched on technology, but there's really no excuse around that because we do have technologies that can communicate with the customer via text or whatever in order to streamline, streamline that communication.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So
Mhm.
it's the soft skills. The soft skills side of auto is not talked about enough, right? Hiring and training right. That's the number one thing you can do to improve customer experience, right?
For sure.
So jumping back in here, I think obviously Lexus stands out, but there does seem to be this upper tier that ends with Cadillac, and I would say it's 30% of the brands are beating the benchmark, and Cadillac is up there. And so what I did is I mapped out which brands had the most significant difference between their communication rank versus their overall rank, just to see how this topic specific performance mapped to their core reputation metrics. And you can see that Cadillac is way ahead of the rest, where its reputation metrics are behind, but its communication metrics are way ahead. So they're making the biggest jump. And as you noted earlier, Jeff, Mercedes and Hyundai go the opposite direction. So it comparatively is a weakness for them,
Yeah,
according to
that's a
the
shame to see
generalized
that.
data here.
How do I
Yeah.
get my Super Cruise to work?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there likely is a component of the buyer base for each of these brands and the technology and the nature of the vehicles or the expectations set likely have an influence here. How much, I have no idea. It's probably fairly complicated, but I think that is certainly a factor. So while I was identifying this data, there it goes. I was reading automotive news every year after NADA. So we got back from automotive news, trying to catch up on what happened. And there's the dealer meetings. I'm sure you guys have been to these. And Auto News does a little summary of what each brand's directives are for the next year. What are the goals? What are the brands focusing on? It's very top level, but Cadillac stood out to me a little bit. Basically, they're saying we have these 4 new cars to sell. They're EVs, crossovers. They're on the expensive side, going after luxury buyers. And in the past year or two, the Lyric crossover has been pulling in 70% of buyers have been conquests. So they have this history of conquest buyers, namely from Mercedes and Audi. And Cadillac seems to think that this is the direction in order to bring in more customers, and how they're planning to try to execute on this in 24 is through a great customer experience, making the best first impression, and training their teams to do so. So what I was curious about was Cadillac has this hypothesis of how they think they're going to win. Most of their EV buyers are conquests. If we create an exceptional dealership experience, we'll drive more conquests. But what do the reviews say about it? Is this a realistic goal? Is this based in reality? Is it at all in touch with customer feedback from last year? So we can poke around here and see if there's like how in touch with their customer base Cadillac is. So I've got a few examples of Cadillac's topic data to set the record. Alex, are you able to move our faces over to the other side of the screen?
Let's
see for the dots here. So again, I'm focusing on the top 10 topics just to sort of condense the information a little bit. For clarity's sake, these are the top 10 topics that are most influential. And comparing Cadillac to auto industry benchmarks for all 32 OEMs, we can see that Cadillac is within 6 or 7% of the industry norm in almost all major categories. It's not dramatically overperforming or underperforming in any category except for communication. And 7% below the negative benchmark is not a huge number in reality, but after having looked at what the competitors are doing, it is pretty substantial. There's not a ton of movement in that category specifically. But what I see here is Cadillac is basically kind of in line with what the industry standards are. But when we move to the two competitors that have been named, Audi and Mercedes, we start to see a little bit of striation. So Cadillac's going after customer experience. They're going after it on the sales side. So if we look at the sales department performance, at the moment, Cadillac is outperforming both Mercedes and Audi in sales, notably 12% more positive mentions of the sales department for Cadillac versus Mercedes. And on the Audi side, it's basically net neutral, 1-to-1, slight advantage there. So they have a decent foothold there. That's something to build off of, right? But then you look down the list and you basically have, for drivers of positivity, good experience with staff in the sales department, and what are the qualities of the people that you're working with in the sales department. And for professionalism and knowledge, Cadillac's getting smoked by these two brands in those categories. About around 20% fewer positive mentions for those two categories.
So that Benz is doing a better job, I guess, at product knowledge, training of the sales staff, service staff. I mean, I can speak for that. We've got a ton of training all the time. We've got quarterly training. We got to keep up with, the videos are sort of long and very detailed. So that's not surprising because Benz definitely does a good job at that. But that's exactly what you're saying is this makes it obvious, at least according to this data, that the manufacturer Benz is doing a better job than Cadillac when it comes down to knowledge of their salespeople.
Well,
yes,
it's easy when you're a Cadillac salesperson. You only need to know what the Escalade is, right?
Well, that's true. Yeah, they should be kicking it.
So I think what stands out here for me is professionalism strikes me as a key quality for somebody that's trying to create a luxury experience. So that's a decent red flag. And if you're selling EVs, I mean, you know better than me, Jeff, but my assumption is that the buyer base is going to be less educated because it's just newer technology, and therefore more knowledge of how it works and the ability to articulate that is of even more importance.
That may be a general rule. Most of the people come in, the few that do come in looking for electric, they've really done a lot of research. So a lot of times they're pretty knowledgeable. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm running into, but in general, that may not be the case. I mean, I can't imagine someone just jumping over to an electric car just because, of course, now I'm thinking logically, so that wouldn't make sense. Never mind.
This showed up in our voice in our broad voice of customer research too, though, that the EV experience is not on par with traditional ICE vehicle purchase experience, and knowledge of the platform by the staff at the stores is repeatedly called out as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, Jeff, that's the story. Maybe it's like, look, this buyer is really well educated, and if they don't feel like you're on the same playing field with them, their assumption is you should be as educated or more educated than they are, and maybe they're generally just not feeling that, right?
Yeah, I've being in the business and just speaking to friends and family throughout the years, it always seemed like that was sort of one of the top complaints, was the fact that they were more knowledgeable. They have more knowledge of the product, of the model, than what the salesperson did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Point of frustration.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, how important is that at the end of the day? Obviously, because, look at the numbers here. But a lot of times, they would always follow up with, they were really great, had great experience. They were very friendly. He or she was super friendly. He didn't know shit about the vehicle, but everything else was great.
Mm-hmm.
We pick those up all the time. I mean, there's like 3 topics in the review just talked about, right? And so knowledge takes a ding, the staff gets a thumbs up, and we kind of break that apart and attribute it to these different topics.
Okay.
I can tell you how
I think
from
the insight here that Cadillac could take away is, in its training, it's behind on professionalism and knowledge. They can make an assessment for how valuable or important that is, but that's where they're losing right now.
And according to this data versus that article, they're not aligned.
This is just more specific.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say.
Alex, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I had a somewhat recent experience. We're actually looking at my wife wanted to take a look at some things a few months ago, and we looked at the Escalade, and then we went and looked at the Grand Wagoneer that compete, and the salesperson at the Cadillac store was just like, "Here, I'll throw you the keys. You go drive it." Didn't really show us anything. We asked some questions. He didn't really know. And then went to the Wagoneer, looked at that. We didn't know anything about it. Just seeing what they were kind of like. And the salesperson was so knowledgeable that I still like the Escalade more than the Wagoneer, but my wife was just starting to really consider the Wagoneer just because the salesperson was so accommodating and had all the answers to every little question and then some. So it changed the entire experience and brought a new consideration into the research phase.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it's still a people business.
Oh yeah. People will always buy cars from people they like and trust.
Yep. Some old birdie.
My last point on Cadillac is that when we turn it over to the negative side, looking at how it performs against Audi and Mercedes for negative reviews, if Cadillac is able to successfully bring in buyers, bring in new buyers, they're well positioned to sort of retain those buyers based upon a good service experience that's been noted in their reviews in the last year. In the most important categories, communication and service, Cadillac's outperforming both of these competitors, Mercedes-Benz by quite a bit, Jeff, on communication.
Yeah, Mercedes they're getting their ass whooped here.
But Mercedes is outperforming Cadillac in repair, so it's 10% fewer negative mentions of they didn't fix my Mercedes correctly, something along those lines, and better communication around price. I guess it's not necessarily only communication, but less negativity for Mercedes around price. So it's a little bit mixed there, but for broad communication mentions, Cadillac's outperforming there, and it's pretty neck and neck with Audi overall. So best of luck to Cadillac. See if they can conquest buyers and bring them in, and then retain them.
Now, have you been able to share any of this information with Cadillac?
I'll leave that one to
Not directly. We've reached out at this point to every manufacturer to share their specific results and some of the rankings and things. We've engaged with a handful of them who are interested. Obviously, CSI and SSI has been under the microscope for at least the last 10 years of my career. There's just been this question of, are we doing it right? And there are a number of OEMs who are either currently using public signals like reviews, or are very interested in the idea of making that part of the measure, right? I think this is only Matt Murray's opinion, right? But if we're sending a 37-question survey via email and expecting people to fill it out, the people who are filling it out are likely more the negative folks who have the energy and the motivation, and they've got an axe to grind. So I don't believe necessarily that email-based surveys post-transaction are giving you the right cross-section of your customer base in order to make real outcomes or make decisions. So
I agree with that.
Do y'all remember the ones they used to send in the mail?
I don't think.
Oh man, I think it was.
Oh yeah, you had to have an example sitting at your desk.
That thing was crazy.
Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that.
No.
Come on.
Like the census? Do you guys fill out the census when it comes? No.
Reviews are easy though. That's kind of the whole point.
I do fill it out. Sorry.
You probably should start doing it though.
You're in the business, Jeff. Get how it works.
For reasons we'll leave off this show. Yeah.
So, any questions on that? Yeah, or do we dive into Jeff's store?
Let's put Jeff in the hot seat.
Sure.
Well, lucky for Jeff, there's nothing scary about Hagerstown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sharing.
You haven't been here before.
That might be, you know what? Let's start there. What has the start of this year been like at the store in terms of sales volume, general morale? Like, how are y'all feeling at Hagerstown?
Sales volume's definitely been down. Yeah, not so great for sales volume, new and used. New's been a struggle. Selling EQs has been a struggle.
EVs,
yeah. It's a small dealership. We've got 4 salespeople, 3.5 really. So, trying to very close knit. So, when it comes down to morale and stuff like that's all good and positive. We get a lot of great customer reviews. A lot of people will pass to other Benz dealerships to come to our dealership because our shop labor rates, $20-$30 cheaper because we're right outside the DC metro area. So our shop labor rate can be $20 cheaper. And most of the time, we offer better service. When it's that one-to-one service, people will drive past 2 dealerships to come here. Does that answer your
Okay.
question?
Yeah, and I'm curious, do you know what your average monthly RO volume is?
I did. Um,
It's okay. I'm just curious because
yeah. Does 300 sound?
That sounds exactly right for your store.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's where we're at, right around the 3 to 315.
You're a little
We
more
start to
than
get a
10
little
a day.
worried once it gets into the 250s. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what I always do, frankly, is start with the reality of Mercedes-Benz Hagerstown publicly. And if I'm just evaluating the store as a customer, it looks great, right? 4.7 star rating, 1,100 reviews, spot on there. And then
Matt's teasing
I
me. He's
like.
going to bitch slap me here in about 2 seconds.
No, no, this is thankfully I was frankly, like, anytime we say, hey, we're gonna publicly go through your store, I get a little bit nervous. But we one thing to point out immediately is that in the start of this year, this is Jan 1 to today, you are outperforming your lifetime average. So the reviews that you've received in the last 2.5 months are ahead of your lifetime average on Google, which is great. Right? You don't necessarily want the other side of that story where we're headed in the wrong direction. That star rating average is truly an average. So as long as we're staying at or above, awesome.
Mhm.
This 2% negative sentiment, it really doesn't get better than that.
I think that's the best I've seen.
Yeah,
That's
puts you in
wild.
the top 5% of our entire customer base.
Easily.
Go up.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see it's down 60% compared to the previous 75 days. And sales and service, great star ratings out here. So that's a perfect start for you all. You can get a sense kind of where your reviews came from in this time frame. Google's generally always going to be dominant. You've got some good pickup on DealerRater there. And then, of course, we like to talk about Profit Center, and you nailed it there. Like, your service volume or RO volume is so much higher than sales. The probability that service is going to produce more reviews is very high.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And in most cases, we tell our dealer customers, look, service is going to determine essentially your overall star rating, right? So it's a beautiful start of the year for you all. Not a lot to talk about in trend reports because you've hung on to that really high rating for so long. You can see the average, or excuse me, the lifetime performance is visible here across all your review sites, and kind of what's happened in this time frame. We've seen a nice increase across all of your review sites. Your Google business profile, we're going to switch this actually to weekly. Smooth that
We
out
see
a
all
little
those
bit.
improvements because we use WideWail.
Hey, attaboy, Jeff.
Thank you.
I found this.
Make it
I don't know what.
make it into a
Yeah.
pitch fest. I say it with sincerity. I mean, we've been with you guys for it's been quite a while now. We were with a particular company that you were working with, and then once you start doing all the services, that's when we migrated over to you, and zero issues at all.
Thanks for that. I didn't know how to make sense of this. This is pretty unique, and sure, it's a smaller number, but you've had a pretty large uptick in asks for directions from your GBP. And that's
Really?
I don't normally see a 70% type jump. GBP traffic in the first, call it, year, if a dealer doesn't have a great review strategy generally, in that first year, when you start getting hit with a nice frequency of reviews and you're responding, your scores are going up, oftentimes the GBP responds with more activity. It's more visible. You're visible for more search terms. You're just getting more activity generally. You are at this point where your reputation is so great that you're not going to continually earn additional traffic. You're bound by a geo, but we saw a spike in this quarter really, in people asking for directions to the store. So you may be able to filter and make some sense of that. I don't know.
I was hoping you could. What's some of the different nuances that would,
Yeah.
correlate to that?
Well, Jeff, you're within driving distance of the greatest increase of population in the United States, that Northern Virginia territory. You might be pulling
Thanks for
from
reminding me. Yeah, that's
some,
very true
some of
though.
that.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe you've done a good job pulling in some buyers from further out this quarter. We see in buy sell
Potentially.
activity, there tends to be more ask for directions.
Okay.
Name changes even will trigger GBP activity because folks don't make assumptions that the store's in the same place.
Hmm.
And obviously, new points. Any new business in any vertical that asks for directions goes wild for that first 18 months.
I would also
Um,
assume maybe, which we haven't changed anything in our advertising, but if someone, you know, maybe adds a new channel of advertising, that could also sway that, right?
Yep, it certainly could. So there's, I guess what we're circling here is there's a ton of factors
Could
that can
be an
impact that.
inventory mix. So, so many Mercedes stores are
Absolutely.
carrying
Yeah.
EVs, and it could be that you guys have had some special non-EV vehicles that have been desirable. Still thinking.
Yep, totally possible.
Yeah.
And then I want to thank you in the store. Your response time to reviews is less than a day, and that includes the negative reviews that we escalate to you. Your team responds really quickly, takes care of the customer, which likely is, that's reflected here in this score, right? Like customer
Hmm.
experience matters at your store. So diving
That's
a little
great.
bit
I love
deeper.
that.
Yeah, kind of a unique insight here. I thought you'd like to see your store presents multiple options for folks to choose a review site, and just getting an idea of where
Hmm.
those clicks go. What is the customer's preference in terms of review site? You actually over-index a little bit on Facebook. For whatever reason, your customer base is going to Facebook more often than we see generally. In most cases, that's kind of 10 to 15% at Facebook. Your customer likes Facebook a little bit more. So just an
I
interesting insight.
wonder if that's demographics.
Certainly could be, right?
Hmm.
I
Them
also
old
like to
people,
watch.
right?
Yeah,
What's that?
those old people.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Yep. Yep. That's why I
And
said it.
Which would
I
be all
always,
of us and up now, right?
right,
Yes, that
right.
includes us.
Not
Um,
me.
this, by the way, when we send invites on behalf of the store, we try to go SMS first. If the number fails, we'll back up to email, or if a customer doesn't have a
Mhm.
phone number, we'll go to their email. It's a good measure of your DMS contact cleanliness. Like, are you collecting good phone numbers? About 15% of the time, we're not able to send a text to your customers. Now, you can see open rates pretty close, right? Open rate, by the way, is a click on the link. It's not just did they open it. So you're thinking like,
Okay.
wait, everybody opens text. Everybody reads the text. It's whether they click the link to open the landing page for leaving a review.
Uh-huh.
And the open rates are pretty similar. Could be a demographic thing. In most cases, open rates are a little lower in email. But call out there, 15% of your customer base we could not send a text to because we couldn't get a good phone number.
Hmm.
So let's talk about maybe for a minute, and we're not going to actually look at your store first. What I wanted to do is introduce you to the app side of some of what Jake was talking about. So while we do a lot of work in data science and research to go collect industry level insights or brand level insights, at the individual dealer group level, we're also constantly analyzing inbound reviews through an AI layer to understand what people are talking about. So I want to show you two different groups, and I'm just going to keep their names hidden to protect the innocent here. But this is one dealership group with close to 30 locations. And this scatter plot represents, the score average rating up the left axis and the density of mentions on the bottom. So if I just maybe explore this group has an average rating of a 3.4 for car maintenance or repair related reviews in this reporting period. right? If you're under 4 really anywhere, that's probably not great. We want to notice that and start digging in, clicking through, reading what people have to say. Their management mentioned at a 3. I don't get too wrapped around the axle around mentions of management being negative, primarily because oftentimes that's a customer who's been passed off to management. Something difficult is happening maybe. So management sometimes gets the toughest case, but interesting to see that from the customer. So you start just kind of exploring the scatter plot of 3.5 on wait time. All the data is also visible here in the table, which our customers can export, manipulate, add to their own dashboards, things of that nature. But we oftentimes, when I present this data, people ask, does one group really differ from another? Right? Like if you're at 30 stores, is the experience pretty consistent? And the answer is no. So if you take kind of a mental snapshot of where all these dots are on the scatter plot, and you look at this group, you'll notice there's not a lot below a 4.0, right? So this group compared to this group, we can pretty confidently say that this group is delivering a better customer experience. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does.
Generally we'll be the same set of topics because car shoppers, customers talk about the same thing, but the results vary based on process. For Hagerstown, the beginning of this year, here's your scatter plot. Management, again, like I said, a little bit below a 4.0. That's not entirely surprising due to what management generally has to deal with, right? Communication at 4.1, that's a great job. Communication is tough to get right. When you're at or above a 4.0, you are doing a nice job communicating with your customer. And of course, again, all the data is here separated by topic. There's several pages. Generally speaking, this page is going to show you the stuff that's most important to your customers.
So I'm logged into my WideWail admin. I'm not finding that report. Am I open to that one?
Yeah, so go on the left-hand side and pop the reporting slide out there, and tags should be at the bottom. Do you see it?
Oh, duh. Never mind. I went all the way down to invitations. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We can flip this to your people as well. So in the process of processing your reviews, we're also looking for mentions of your staff. And
yeah, I saw that.
I think I actually mentioned this in the last in our last Refresh Friday, but there is an interesting phenomenon that if something goes really well, customers will mention staff by name. If they're upset, they tend to say the service department, the sales team, the finance person. They don't want to call people out individually in negative reviews. So just an interesting
people are
phenomenon.
so kind.
Yeah, there's some manners.
Yeah. Part of me is surprised, but I try not to be.
So the only call out, and Lexi only has 2 tags, so we're not going to be real hard on Lexi, but a 3.5 puts Lexi in this distinguished group of being below 4.0 with a single tag here is Justin. I don't know what Justin's role is, but generally speaking, again, at your store, your folks are doing a fantastic job here to start the year. A lot of consistent 5-star ratings.
That makes me happy.
So,
great.
Yeah, it's a hats off. It's a hats off moment for Hagerstown. You guys in our platform are doing a fantastic job according to your customers.
I'm curious. Well, this maybe should be off the call, but is there a way to compare this to other data to competitive dealerships, like other Mercedes dealerships in the area?
At the moment, we don't do that sort of app side. We can do that privately, but certainly there's a maturation of all of this that brings in benchmarking data. Right.
I mean, that can really tell you like what are you going up against, not just on a 5-star rating, but where are they failing to be exact? How's overlap? How do we compare to that? Where are we sucking at, and maybe they're better at? Yeah, it'd be interesting seeing it. Okay.
It would be very much found in the topic related data. So as I mentioned, like auto customers talk all about the same things, right? So these top 10 most important categories are the same for every dealership, every group. That's where we'll find the variation. So you can expect us, frankly, to start showing some of that on the front end here.
Okay.
In the meantime, using the WideWail Reputation Index it's not this specific with the topic level data, but you can see how you stack up based on the basic metrics. So review volume, rating, negativity, response rate, all those things. You can filter it down to DC Metro, whatever radius you think is relevant to your business, and
Okay.
get that list up in the filters tab. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, a Tesla store. Well, this wouldn't work as well as this is city targeted, but
Do it by Maryland and Mercedes. Filtering from that top, the green bar up top. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, right in there.
Oh, I'll get there. You're a little bit delayed, I think. Whoops. Maryland. And then it's out of condition.
So who's your top competitor, Jeff, in your mind?
Oh, it's tough because there's no one within an hour or so around us.
Who's the nearest BMW dealer?
An hour plus away. There's a Caddy dealership and an Audi dealership in Frederick. That's it. I mean, however, once you get past that hour mark and you're in the metro area, you got 10 Benz dealerships within a 30-mile radius.
Yeah.
Probably 20-mile radius. Yeah. So there are competitors, but it's one thing I always found out with Benz from the very beginning was trying, unless it was a nice pre-owned or certified, getting a customer that lives in the metro area that most likely has been driving Benz for a while, and they've got some familiarity with the other dealerships, or maybe they've got their favorite dealership down there. And they're not going to come out to us. Very difficult. Unless, like I said, unless it's something pre-owned or it's a first-time Benz buyer and they haven't built a relationship with the dealerships. Sometimes I can get them to take the hike.
So this is a tool that is really, I imagine if you're focusing on your geo, you can go to widewale.com/WARI to the index. We got about 17,000 dealerships in here. And we collect the data. We basically refresh the scrape every single month and give you lifetime performance of each of the GBPs. So the only store, and you remember, your 2% negative rating to start this year, right? Lifetime, it looks like it's a little higher, but that's still unbelievable performance. And only Owings Mills is outpacing that, at least in your Maryland geo.
I mean, we are the smallest dealership by far compared to all those other dealerships. And yet somehow our volume per month is 22 in second place.
Yep.
So you're 2x the industry average on review volume, made even more impressive by your relative small size. So like that 10 reviews a month number includes Longo Lexus doing 600 reviews a month on the top end, and this long tail of dealerships doing one or less reviews per month on the bottom end. But yeah, you guys are number 2 in the state for Mercedes dealers based on volume.
Euro Motor Cars down there in Germantown only doing 6. It's pretty pitiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty substantial dealership.
We need to get Justin to watch this, Jeff.
I will.
So the data behind this is all of last year. So it's 2023 full year. So this is your average performance for all of 2023. The reporting we were looking at was a smaller time frame, I think from the beginning of this year or something in the reporting.
Yeah.
So that'll change over time, but the index is aggregate for full year 2023.
I love it. That's great. That's great. How long did it take to aggregate all this data?
It was about a year's worth of work.
Okay.
And it's like aggregating the data itself isn't the hard part. You know, like you can find services to help you collect reviews. The hard part is coming up with is the data science side, is evaluating all the data and understanding where the mean is, and how do we account for the stores that have 600 reviews versus stores that have 5 reviews. Does it necessarily mean that a store with 600 reviews should automatically outrank a store with 5 reviews? Not necessarily, right? If they don't have the opportunity to produce 600 reviews, you can't hold that against them. So there was plenty of work in coming up with the methodology behind things like our voice of customer report and the brand scorecard.
Okay.
Yeah, we started in earnest. We started last July, I would say, and then it has been a consistent effort since last July, building the research and figuring out our method and putting the information together, doing the marketing and design, and building up to NADA in a lot of ways.
Gentlemen, it's a lot of data. I mean, I'm pleased only because we're doing so well. So it's, it's great to see it. But, looking at that Cadillac information, especially how it compares up against their sales information, maybe what they're expecting, there's a much different story to be told. So that's awesome.
Yeah, our sincere hope is that, data like this starts to jump from marketing to operations. The reviews are not just about search rankings. Right? They're a large part of that, but there are very few tools that knit together marketing and operations teams. And here we have an opportunity, because of the voice of the customer, to unify them and create initiatives that best serve the customer and therefore the brand, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, hopefully you can get this, and some of the OEMs will actually take a look at this, and be great if everyone was able to improve their scores.
Well, there's someone on this call who's never talked to an OEM before, so.
Wait, who's that?
You.
Oh, yeah. Well, if we're being rhetorical, it's like, really?
Yeah.
Jeff, have you never talked to an OEM?
No, Matt's got some
I
experience.
guess that would be me.
Yeah, that might be Jake, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man out.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
So,
thanks for having us.
What do you guys, before we wrap it up real quick, are you guys working on anything new that in the data science area that you'll be presenting here soon?
Because this wasn't enough.
We're thinking about it. Yeah. Well, if you're interested in what we've already done, WideWail.com, and then we have a data insights tab under the resources, and we have a whole mini site for the automotive reputation index, which is sort of encompasses a lot of things, but it's the overall brand. We have 2 reports. Voice of the customer is general trends in the industry. The brand scorecard digs into the OEMs, and then the index, which we were just looking at, is publicly available to anyone who wants to find their dealership and see how they stack up locally.
And what's the URL again?
WideWail.com/WARI is the easiest. WideWail
Automotive Reputation Index.
Yeah. I'll get that link added over in the forums.
And
so to answer your question too, Jeff, a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment is frankly private analysis for some of the very large dealership groups. So we're comparing customer sentiment across some of the publics, and think of the 50, 60 rooftop and up groups that want to know, what do our customers have to say compared to what these other large groups customers are saying, we share some of that privately, right? But it's been pretty cool to take a close look there. There are enormous differences when you get down to the dealership group level.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's got to be exciting to look at and tell stories around.
for sure.
I've been thinking more lately about more of a organized output related to the topic analysis. So in the brand scorecard, we preview bits and pieces. We don't go super deep into the analysis there. So I think there's a lot more to explore and uncover specific to topics. And then we'll be doing each of these reports annually. So as we approach next year, we'll be launching new iterations of the same reports again and looking at year-over-year change metrics and hopefully able to track certain brands and how they might be evolving in different directions in terms of their reputation, stuff along those lines.
Cool.
If you've got a timeline, I don't know how far back in time you go, but an interesting one to play off of right now would be Jaguar. Just has
That would be fun.
changed over time, and is it going down as the brand is starting to have rumors of whether it's going out or not. So
so the snapshot of our research is from last year. So anything that's happening now, we might start to pick up on, I suppose, towards the end of this year. So I'll definitely keep an eye on that. But that would not have factored into the information from last year.
Cool. Well, hopefully they stay around.
Yeah.
Love that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well, gentlemen, again, it's always a pleasure. Really appreciate you sharing this data. And like I said, I'll get a link over to WideWail to that specific page if dealerships want to mess around with that reporting. So
thanks for
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great
got
weekend.
it.
Go
Feeling refreshed.
Take care.
Good fellas.
See you guys.